So, guys, we have a very interesting list. Konami has hit a bunch of cards. So, we're going to quickly go through them. I'll do a more in depth discussion of these changes later. But start off with Aguido and Kelbeck. I think it was needed. Tier is just a bit toxic, in my opinion, especially with these cards. I think that hitting these means that Tier doesn't rely on RNG as much to just kind of steamroll and take over the game. I don't know if this means that tier is fair enough to get more tier names back. In my opinion, no, but we'll see what Konami does in the next list. But I think for now, these are definitely good hits. These cards are just not fair. They do too much to both you and the opponent, so they definitely need to go. Circular, I don't like the circular hit because I don't think Cyburst is doing that well. And it hasn't been doing that well. I understand the notion of this homogenizing deck building, but I think it's a weak excuse that we use a lot of the times because there's so many cards we can say that do that. And I think the problem is that Cyburst is already quite weak. Circular at 1 was already a big hit for them, and they have not performed in the current meta. And then to hit them to 0, along with releasing a bunch of new decks, just feels like a lot of unnecessary hatred. It feels like Joshua Schmidt's having too much sway on this list. So I'm not really happy about that, but it is what it is. I wasn't playing anyway. Isolde needed to go. I think there's just a lot of problems with this card. I think the biggest problem with Isolde is that it just does too much for Warriors as a whole and then Infernobles. And again, it's funny because it's when you look at Circular, it's a similar thing of homogenizing deck building, but Isolde takes that to absurd levels, adds any warrior to hand, then it dumps 4 equip spells, and a lot of equip spells you dump, you want them in the grave so you have easy access to them, and then it also special summons any warrior from the deck pretty much, depending on how many equip spells you send. It's so easy to go into as well. SP Little Knight made this card even better because now you had decks like Infernova that could interact a bit, then use the SP to play into this. Yeah, this card just needs to go. I don't think it kills Infernobles. I think they still can play. They have lines through their synchro instead to start their combo, but I think this does heavily limit them. It makes it a lot harder for the deck to play through their connector getting ashed as well. It makes the deck a lot weaker to board breakers and things like that, because I think that Princess card, while they probably still can search it, they will have to make some trade-offs if they're searching that specifically. So I think Zold is a pretty fair hit. Then looking at the limited list, everything here seems pretty okay. HARP HORROR to 1, good. Orcus deserved it. I don't know why it took so long, but we're happy it's back. I don't think Redox will matter. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think Redox will change much. LFter to 1 or 2 is what we expected for Rescue Ace. I think Rescue Ace is still good. It gets a little bit weaker up until Phantom Nightmare, then it gets strong again. So I don't think it hurts Rescue Ace. It just becomes a bit weaker to draw, basically. Shavara is a pretty big hit for Unchained, but I think it was needed. Unchained was becoming this deck that you just can't do anything against. No hand trap really works against them. Nib doesn't really work. Ash doesn't really work. This reduces their starters heavily. So this deck is still, if it does start the combo, it's still quite resilient. It's still going to lose to Nib now. It's going to lose a lot harder to Nib now, unless they're playing Disaster. But I do like the idea being that when they do get started, it's a good deck, a lot of recursion, a lot of grind, but it's harder for them to get started, which is how it should be with this deck. Dryas and Healer hits, it's hard to say. I don't know how this affects plants, just because I know there's new Aramage cards coming out. I don't know if those cards were going to replace some of the Sun Avalon cards or if they were going to be played alongside. So my guess is it will probably be a bit of a hit to this deck, but who knows. Ib, I don't know if it'll make a huge difference, but it is nice to have this card back. Snatch Steal, I don't think it'll matter. The Floodgates is really interesting. It seems like, is this Konami saying that they have a different philosophy on Floodgates now, where it's kind of like a one and done thing, where it's like they don't want you just shoving a million Floodgates in your deck and winning off that. It's like you have your one Floodgate, but if your opponent outs it, you're screwed. I mean, it's interesting. They didn't hit Skill Drain, but they did hit these ones. It doesn't really hurt Lab because they don't have to play these. Skill Drain they care more about, but I do still like these hits. I think they're good hits. And I think, even though I don't like cards at 1 usually, Floodgates are some cards that I do think work at 1, because again, it's like your 1 goes a match should be a big threat, but then after that, if I've outed it, I've outed it. I shouldn't have to just deal with another one. So yeah, pretty good hit. Then moving on, semi-limitless. Pranktops 2 is nice. It's a really generic card. It's great for side decking. It's good against back row decks. Good against front row decks. Good card. Terratop is probably just to push the Goblin support that's going to be coming out soon. And Sleepy Memory, it's a good hit to Pearly. I think this does 2 things, which is great. Firstly, no more draw 6, which is ridiculous. I think it's good that we have a way to stop. They don't always get it, but it's good to slow it down. And it also means that my friend doesn't guaranteed get you a sleepy memory anymore, which is good. That's why I like the Pearly cards at 2. These are cards that I do think sometimes can be at 2. I don't think Pearly needed the hit, by the way, but I think this is probably one of the fairest hits they could have got, because it means now your my friend isn't guaranteed getting you that amazing combo. So yeah, definitely a fair hit. I think Pearly will still be mostly fine. Then Unlimited, I don't think Inferni Archfiend is doing anything. Unicorn, I don't think is changing much for Kashtira. I guess if you're playing Speedroid Cash, yeah, you saw a buff. But I think it doesn't change much just because it's one Unicorn. Yes, Kashtira only really has 6 stars, so they went from 5 to 6, which is a bigger increase than most decks, but it doesn't change much. What made Kashtira unfair was Arias Heart and Diablosis and things like that. And so having the extra Unicorn, I think, is fine. I don't think it'll change them much. Mind Control to 3 doesn't matter. The release of Thrust changes every pretty much normal spell in the game, where it becomes, is this card better than Thrust purely by itself? If it's not, you're just going to play at 1 if you are going to play it. So I don't think it changes anything. Desire should have been at 3 anyway. I don't know why Prosperity wasn't hit. So yeah, Desire should be at 3 anyway. Judgment's not going to change anything. Starter to 3 is quite nice as Sprite. I don't think it changes a huge amount. I think Sprite was good anyway, but is what it is, an Upstart Goblin. I think in the context of most competitive decks, you're not going to be playing this at 3. We've seen that the format is very quick to pick up draws and chuck them at people as soon as any sort of searching starts going on. So it's a bit risky to be playing 3 Upstart, but there are some decks that can probably take advantage of this that we might see do it a little bit. I would hesitate though. For me even, I can't see a world where I'd play this over another hand trap, or play this over another power spell, or play this over a Prosperity or something. That's the problem with Upstart as well, because if your deck can play Prosperity, you'd much rather play Prosperity. You don't even want to have Upstart in your deck for the most part. So we'll see what happens with Upstart, but it's still an interesting card. It's cool to have it free, and I don't think it changes much. So all in all, this is mostly a pretty good list. I'm not happy with the circular hit. I think that was a bit premature. I wish that the Thrust and Talents cards were here. I wish Labyrinth was here, but mostly this is a good list. It'll be interesting to see some Orcus builds. I might do some testing with that, but yeah, I'll have some more in-depth discussions about the list and what the format will be moving forward. But thank you all for watching, and I'll talk to you all soon. Peace.